Welcome to another episode of Challenging the Norm. His and hers look at life and business with your hosts, Paul Snell and myself, Lindsay Burden. The podcast for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners that want to experience success in their own way. Wrestling with the topics that matter and reality checking the latest trends in business. Paul works with business owners, showing them how they can take the stress out of transforming teams into performance powerhouses that love what they do, while I offer business coaching that empowers ambitious women in business to create financial abundance and a time-rich lifestyle without sacrificing their joy. Well, Paul, this is going to be our last podcast episode of 2023. And we have decided to hit a really big topic. And I remember the time when we wrote letters, Paul. So good morning, how are you? And do you remember the art of letter writing?
Morning, Lindsay. I'm great, and you're right. This is a really good topic. Letter writing, yes. In fact, don't tell anybody, but I still do write letters. And the reason I know that is because I know how much it costs to send a letter these days. When did that happen? Yes, great topic. You know, Lindsay, you and I have spent probably the last half an hour discussing before we press record about
we should really press record earlier, you know.
You know what? I think there are times we should just record our pre-podcast conversation. Yes. It'll be great as a podcast. And it is a really good point. You know, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. The idea, the difference in how we perceive things via different generations. And, you know, we discussed lots of generations, right back to what they call the silent generation, 1928 to 1945, right up to today's Gen Xers. And this subject is, let's just qualify. You and I are from the Gen X generation. Without telling anybody our age, that's roughly 1965 to 1995. And we come from a generation which is, and this is really important because it sort of has bearing on our conversation. We come from this generation where we were the first generation to experience technological change at a pace never known before.
Yeah.
And what I mean by technological change, I mean the use of computing in some way, shape, or form. You know, I can remember my first ever job was as a computer operator at a publishing company. And it still makes me smile now that the computer we had that filled a room larger than my living room, my phone is now more powerful than that computer.
No way.
Yeah. And so it was really key for you and I. We went from, in general trends terms, from a very manual process. You know, we talk about writing letters. You definitely wrote letters back in the day. To a time when we can communicate via computers, and it was easier, quicker. Connection was so much more readily available. For us, it was a fundamental shift in how we lived our lives. Now, we have to keep that in mind. Keep in mind that you and I have this taste of two worlds. And now we look at the millennials and Gen Zs who have never known anything else other than every technological infrastructure in place. It's the norm for them, and it wasn't the norm for us. And so, you know, this podcast came from a conversation where I'm going, do you know, there are times, and let's just take language as an example, where I just don't know what these guys are talking about.
I don't know what my kids are talking about.
Yeah. And the classic is, for a long time, I thought LOL meant lots of love, you know, just craziness. So really what I think we should explore, Lindsay, is this difference, we called it them and us. It's not really them and us, because that really sounds awful and separate, and we're not.
But that is sometimes how we feel.
Yes.
We don't understand this generation that are coming up behind us. And it challenges us, particularly in business, doesn't it? Because it is a very different way of being. It's a very different expectation, view, perspective, all of those creative describing words, which if you wrote lots of letters, you'd probably know. But it does put a different spin on business for us, doesn't it?
It does. It does. You've got the millennials and Gen Zs. For them, business is a business focus. Maybe for our generation, and to a degree, baby boomers, the one before us, technology is an additional thing to add on to business that we need to worry about.
Actually, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We can go. It is that's exactly it. For us, it's part, isn't it? It's the tools, it's what we use, it's how we explore. But for those that have come after us, it's normal. It's what they expect to have. They wouldn't know what to do if the internet went down.
I mean, look, it's every day. I've got a 6-year-old grandson. And to him, it's perfectly normal to operate a tablet or, go on his dad's phone, whatever it is. It's just absolutely normal. And if I watch him, there is none of this, well, what do I press? And what's this thing about you touch a screen? It's fascinating to watch. And yet, my dear friend called me over the weekend and said, Paul, I've bought a printer and I've no idea how to get this working. Because the days are gone. Even the days where it goes, plug this into a laptop and configure your printer. Now it says, no, you don't need anything. Just press all these buttons, and if these lights come on, it works fine until it doesn't.
And that, your 6-year-old is a prime example. I remember when my kids were young and my dad was like really struggling with the iPad and couldn't get anything to work, and da 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 da. And the kids would go, it's like this, da 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 da, tap 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 tap. It's like they're born with the tech gene.
Yeah. Normality, isn't it? It must have been the same as a result of the Industrial Revolution, to go from what was nothing to what seemed like incredible progress in how people live their lives and the facilities they had.
Yeah, and I think the challenge, we talk about them and us, and without giving anything away, that them and us, really came from, something that had happened to you, and you going, I don't feel I belong there. And there is this disconnect for us, for those of us that are maturer and remember when, mobiles were the size of a brick and you had to carry a battery pack with it. There is a disconnect, and I think that younger generation, it's now. Everything's got to be now. There's no waiting. I mean, how many people do, I've sent you an email, you've not responded.
Yes.
And I think there is this challenge around that. I was talking to someone just the other day who had some graduates in the business, and the work had been presented and it wasn't correct. So she said, this is a brilliant piece of work. You just need to create this, and this, and we can get it off to the client. They emailed back and said, I can't believe you've questioned my work, or something along those lines. It was like, she was like, but I'm just telling you what's wrong for correcting. Can't criticize. I can't believe you've criticized my work. I'm like, mind blown completely. And I think this is part of the challenge, Paul, that we're used to perhaps, and this is a generalization. There will be lots of exceptions to the rules, but it feels like we've had to work a little bit harder for it. We've had to work it out. We've had to find our way. And now they've got it, it's there, they can go. And then when it doesn't go quite to plan, they've been given the tech gene. They seem now to be lacking the gene that says, well, how do I work this out? How do I find a way? I guarantee those of us in our generation can find a workaround for anything. But the younger generation seem to go, I don't know what to do now. And I wonder if that's how, have you noticed as well that they're really good at jumping from one thing to the other? Okay, so that's bored me, so we'll go to the next. That's bored me, so we'll go to the next. And I don't think social media helps. And we've talked about that before, that constant scrolling, where we go, okay, that's not quite working. So how do we work our way around that?